Next up, we have Fishman Island. Now, a lot of people don't like Fishman Island. I am one of those people. I think Fishman Island is good to show off how far we've come as far as the crew. Everyone's new powers, everyone's new abilities, like pretty much it's a showcase. And I think the issue with that is that it's a very long showcase. We have to go through each character and we kind of have to remember what they could do and then see what they're doing now. And for me, this is one of the arcs that I was reading. And I don't know if you guys remember, but for this arc, the timing before that, we had a huge gap. It was like a month where the manga was kind of, it wasn't on hiatus, it was just on break. So the fact that, we kind of come back and we immediately go into an arc like this, where it's mostly just a showcase arc, it wasn't the most hype thing. And I gotta admit, I don't care about Hody Jones. I don't care about a lot of the issues that were happening here. I think the overall theme of the arc, in which, we're dealing with basically the prejudice that the fishmen go against, I think that is important. I think the Otahime flashback is very important. I don't feel it with Hody Jones. I feel like he exists to move the story along. He had to be a vessel for the whole prejudice, anger thing. Now, the lore we get from the arc, I think, is far more important and far more interesting. We get to learn about Poseidon. We get to learn about, the poneglyphs, Joy Boy, Noah's Ark. All of that stuff is very interesting. And because of that stuff, I think I will put it at B, but I'm going to put it right about there. Jaya is a solid arc. I really don't have anything to say to or against it. Actually, what am I thinking? Jaya is more than just a solid arc. We have the Blackbeard feel here. We have the Shichibukai meeting up at Mary Joy. Oh, we have the Bellamy Punch. Why am I talking like this is just normal arc? No, Jaya's got a lot of stuff to it. Hold on. I lost my mind. I'm gonna put that at A. Yeah, now I'm just thinking about Jaya. There's so many good things about that arc. And it does a lot of setup. We get to see characters like Doflamingo show up, and we get our first glimpse of how he's kind of tied to things in the background. Whereas he has like Bellamy's crew doing things for him, and they fly under his banner, but we see how he handles things when they don't go his way. It's a good sight into Doflamingo, especially since we don't get to see more of him until later on down the road. It builds up a good portion of mystery for him. And then we get the whole Blackbeard feel, where Blackbeard is introduced as this basically just passerby. And we get his amazing quote of, "People's dreams never die," and we just feel some kind of way about Blackbeard. But we don't know he's Blackbeard. We just think he's some dude, eating pie. And then all of a sudden we get the reveal of all the crew members that have been spotted around Jaya. They're all in one group and they're hunting down Luffy. Such a huge thing. This is also when we get that first reveal of Whitebeard, and as he's the world's strongest man. And it's so weird because this is our first view of Whitebeard, and this is probably the worst view of him. Because we see him, he looks old, he's like hooked up to all these machines, he's got nurses around him. It's crazy. And it's insane that the Whitebeard we see here looks nothing like the Whitebeard we see in Rainford. When he's just been Rainford, he's ready to go. But here it looks like, I think it's part of the art style and then part of how he wanted to present himself, but he doesn't look as healthy in Jaya as he does in Marineford. And this is also what leads up to Skypiea, which is a very important arc. In fact, I'll go ahead and do that before I do Punk Hazard. Now, Skypiea, I'm going to put with Jaya, because Skypiea is weird in that there's a lot of elements that I think it could do without. I think it's strong when it caters to the story, but I think it does a weird job of introducing side characters that we don't spend enough time with or don't see enough of to actually like the priests, the ordeals, that kind of stuff. It's interesting, but it's not amazing. However, like the portions when Enel shows up are always terrifying because he's such like a twisted character. He's a different kind of evil. And what I appreciate about One Piece is that a lot of the main antagonists are different kinds of evil. Like Enel is not the same kind of evil as Crocodile, who isn't the same as Doflamingo. And even with those two, like Crocodile and Doflamingo, they seem very similar, but the motivations, the drive, just the energy behind these characters are so different that it makes the arcs more interesting. Also, Enel's fruit is OP. I love every time he uses it. I definitely need to see more of him because he's amazing. And I just like his character, honestly. Like, I was never put off by the God complex. I think that's a really cool concept because he knows what he is and he knows what he has, but he has this like egocentric mind that he is a god just because of his power and his ability. But the fact that he shows you why instead of just being like, no, I'm a god. He goes through the arc showing you why he thinks he's a god. And I love that. Punk Hazard is another arc that I'm not in love with. I don't hate it. Not in love with it though. Law carries this arc because I love Law, and everything he does this arc is amazing. I think we see a lot of the Straw Hats take a bit of a backseat to the buildup of the other overarching plot, where we have kind of Caesar, we have Smoker and the Marines, we have Luffy building up to what he's got to do with Law and Kaido. So it's a setup chapter that doesn't focus necessarily on the crew, but kind of the bigger world events. And I think that makes it more interesting. I don't really care a whole lot about the G5 stuff. It's not that interesting to me. We got to learn a little bit about like the Vegapunk Caesar kind of collab, but we don't learn enough, and it's not really anything that's substantial to Vegapunk besides the Smiler fruit, that he was cloning a devil fruit. And even then, we don't really learn about that like in its entirety until Wano, so even in Punk Hazard, it's not entirely there. But we do see that this is where Aokiji and Akainu fought, which is another big thing. So it's building some elements of the story that we've only heard about, and it's giving us more to think about for the future. I'm going to put it above Baratie. Dressrosa. I had a lot of fun with Dressrosa. I think this is the arc where a lot of people will say there's pacing issues, both anime and manga, and I can see where they're coming from. I think there was basically a lot of chess pieces moving around until they could checkmate. And I think that can get tiring at times, especially if we go through a whole chapter and we're waiting for something, and the beginning's us waiting and the end is us finally being done waiting, so we don't get to see anything till the next chapter or the next episode. So I think that kind of hurts it. But as far as like the content, the villain, I love Doflamingo. I love the introduction of his power. And I like what this does for the story, because it's introducing us to a character who we've only seen bits and pieces of. So we've kind of had to sculpt our idea of him. And then we finally get to him, and he's different than what I expected. Like, obviously he's insanely evil, but he has this complex about family. He has this really horrifying backstory where he kills his dad, kills his brother, and then the way he takes over Dressrosa is nightmarish. Like, he's just so evil, and I love a good evil character. And his demeanor through all of it is fantastic. We also get the introduction of Fujitora. We get to learn that Sabo is back, and that's such a huge thing. One of the things that I often think about is the fact that if you were reading this really early, so back when ASL was in the manga, and we watched Sabo die, I think for the most part, think he's dead until Dressrosa, which is a very long time if you're reading the manga week to week. As far as like people who have been watching and like are just now catching up, so they're kind of binging it, they really don't have a lot of time to kind of just process what's happening here. But I know back in the day when we were thinking about Sabo, every character that was like silhouetted, every time they mentioned something we didn't know about yet, that was Sabo. The Sabo is alive theories were so prevalent, and they were just nonstop, and there was like no real substantial evidence that he was alive. We didn't see anything about him, but the theories just wouldn't go away. And then it finally turns up and he's alive, and I remember just everyone being amazed, just loving it, and I was too. That chapter 731, I want to say, is when we get revealed that Sabo's still alive. It's just such an impactful moment. I'm gonna put Dressrosa above Punk Hazard in B tier. Whole Cake Island. Now, Whole Cake is not it doesn't do a lot for me. I love everything we get from Big Mom and the Big Mom Pirates. I love the family. I love meeting all these new characters, which surprisingly enough, I care a lot about the Big Mom Pirates. I like the different types of characters we have in the Big Mom Pirates, like Galette, Amande, Oven, Raisin, and of course Katakuri. But like, just all the families so interesting. I like watching them interact. I think that's what carries Whole Cake for me is the Big Mom Pirates, because one, we only have a portion of the crew, and it's kind of like it is Sanji centered, and Sanji is not my favorite Straw Hat. He's very low on my list of favorite Straw Hats, so that also probably factors into why I don't love the arc as much. But I think it also but I think it also just doesn't carry weight with me, because we get conflict and setup similar to like Usopp and Luffy, but the weight feels different. It doesn't feel like, two people are fighting against their ideals. It feels more like Whole Cake carries a different weight with me. For me, Whole Cake just doesn't carry as much weight as far as like emotional impact and the story development. It doesn't do a whole lot for me. I think character development, I think it's really strong, but I don't love the progress of the arc as far as the story goes. For me, Whole Cake is going to sit at the top of C. And I think there are a lot of things that make Whole Cake good, but I think there are a lot of things that make Whole Cake bad. Like, honestly, the entire plot around what Sanji is doing, I don't love. I really don't like it. I think it's like, I understand why it's happening. I understand why Sanji's doing the way he's doing things, but it doesn't feel good to me to watch it progress through the story. I don't feel like there is a real solid resolution to what's happening here, and it feels like a detraction from the main story. Like, okay, we were going to do this, but then we got pulled over to the side real quick. So let's go handle this, and then we'll get back to that. And I feel like there should be more impact for what this is supposed to carry. Impel Down goes in B tier, and I'm going to put it above Dressrosa. Now, initially, I didn't like Impel Down because I felt it was too, I don't know how else to describe it, but linear. And I think linear as far as they're going down straight up, but also linear as in the story isn't really growing, it's kind of adapting. Basically, this is kind of the build for Luffy not having the crew and getting a new crew. And the new crew, which is all characters that I actually like watching or reading, and I enjoy seeing the interactions between everyone. But it's set up, they're not really doing anything new, they're just breaking out. However, I think we do get a lot of cool moments in this arc, and what it's building up to is really solid. Getting to see Crocodile again, getting to see Bonchan again, what he did for the rest of the crew, them making it out, and like the setup to Marineford is really strong because you can feel the intense pressure of what's about to happen. Reverie is an S tier arc going above Marineford. Even though it was like, 7 chapters at that? Like, even if that much, because I know 900 was still Whole Cake. I think Reverie started at like 902 and ended at 908. I'd have to actually go back and look at it, but it's a super short arc. Fantastic. So much world building, so much plot development. We get to see revolutionaries, we get to see the Reverie itself, we get to see Im-sama. Like the amount of basically lore we get in just those few pages, panels, and episodes is insane. And for me, the lore heavy arcs will generally reign a bit higher as far as the tier list goes. I love getting more lore, so the more we get, the higher up it goes. Speaking of lore, we got Zoe. I'm gonna put Zoe in A, and I'm gonna put it above Jaya, because I think Zoe does a really good job building off of what we set up in Jaya and Skypiea. We get insight onto what Roger was dealing with, basically what we learned in Skypiea. We get insight on that. Plus, we get new information about the road poneglyphs, we get information about where the last island is, we get information about how they got to that last island. It's just a lore dump. And the greatest thing about it is that it's a lore dump that pertains directly to what the Straw Hats have to do. You know, we aren't just learning about the world, we're learning about what the Straw Hats have to do in order to achieve their goals. And of course, we have Raizo is safe, the introduction of the entire Mink tribe, and we have the build up to Wano. Now, Wano for me right now is sitting at a above post-war. It's been a really enjoyable arc to read. Honestly, it's because it's so long. It doesn't feel like Dressrosa. It honestly feels like things have been happening, whereas in Dressrosa, I felt like there were periods where there were, I don't know, empty chapters, where it would kind of just be a lot of setup for something else to happen, but not necessarily complete the entire arc. Whereas in Wano, I don't really feel like they're empty chapters. I feel like each chapter has something that pertains to a progression in the story. Now, it may be taking a while, there may be a lot to cover, but I think that's how it's supposed to be, because Wano is supposed to be one of the biggest arcs. There's so much centered around Wano that it has to be one of the biggest arcs. And I think my final idea is going to wrap around, of course, once it finishes. But for now, it's a solid A. Everything we've seen, the fights, the anime has been doing a really good job with Wano too. So that's just been enjoyable to watch just as an arc by itself. Like, story aside, development stuff aside, just watching it and being able to enjoy it gives it enough points. And romance on the beginning, the start, is going to go, I'll put it at the end of A, because I love Romance Dawn. Just the entry to everything, with the characters we meet. We get this setup of a really wacky adventure that we can't predict, that we have no idea how it's going to go. We just know it's going to be insane. And now looking at this list, I see that I didn't put anything in D, and I think that's fine. I don't really have an arc that I absolutely hate. And honestly, I don't really have any arc that I just hate. Like, I think every arc has solid pieces that I enjoy. Some have less than others, but I don't think there's an arc in which I'd be like, oh, let me just skip over this arc, or oh, I'm not going to rewatch this. When I rewatch, I watch through all of it because I just enjoy all the arcs. If I had to put one down in C, I would put the Davy Back fight down there. Because I think the only reason, honestly, that was in C is because it covers Aokiji. Other than that, don't really care that much about it. But that is my tier list. Please let me know how you guys feel down below. I imagine that it doesn't match up with everybody's but that is my tier list. Please let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know if you agree, disagree. Drop your own tier list if you want. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.